Now, this is going to be very interesting. I'm not quite sure how best to tackle this. Luckily, I've got a good guest who's going to do it for us. So I think one of the most important things we can do on Sunday Breakfast is offer faith leaders the opportunity to go, in effect, behind the scenes of their work and explain to us the rituals which underpin what they do. Let's be honest, to an outsider, sometimes these rituals can seem, confusing or even odd. But to those who practice them, they form a key part of their worship, and that's the important thing here. In Judaism, mikveh, or ritual immersion, is a key component for many people. But what does it actually mean, and what can it achieve, and can it be brought to a wider audience? Here to answer those questions and attempt to debunk some myths is Rabbi Debbie Young-Summers from Bournemouth, who's involved with the Wellspring Project, which is a project which seeks to have mikveh at its heart. Debbie, I hope I haven't loaded the questions with that introduction there, but I think it's fair.
I can't wait to get going.
Well, I think it's fair to say that this falls into the category of religious rituals and traditions that perhaps a lot of people don't know about, and therefore they can seem confusing or perhaps even strange from the outside. So the first thing I need you to do, as someone who is right at the core of this ritual and believes in the value of the ritual, tell me what it is.
So it's a fantastically beautiful opportunity of ritual, and its roots are in the Torah, in the Bible, when anyone who'd had any kind of bodily emissions that had led to what we call tumah, which is translated as impurity, but isn't really impurity. It's a ritual state that you go in and out of naturally, whether you're male or female or anything else. And the immersion was a way of transforming that moment and marking a moment of change back into a different state. Over Jewish history, it's been continued. It has focused a lot on women's bodies, and I think we have to be honest about that challenge today. Whereas actually originally in the Torah, it was very much about everybody's bodies. And we are hoping at the Wellspring Project to reclaim that sense of everybody's body is welcome. The idea that most people observe it for these days tends to be either for conversion. If you convert to Judaism, you immerse in the mikveh, and that moment of transition is honoured. In the same way that Christians might use baptism, it's thought that John the Baptist was probably using some kind of mikveh ritual when that happened. So some people do know about mikveh a bit more than they think. Yeah. And then the mostly kind of known about use, other than conversion, is for women after they've had a period will go to the mikveh, immerse and emerge and go back to their relationships with their husbands. But obviously we're looking at broadening it a lot, way beyond that.
Yeah. It's Sunday Breakfast. I'm going to respect the tone of the show and also the time of the show, but we're among adults here. When you talk about bodily emissions, you're talking primarily around anything that can emanate from sexual activity.
Yes. Could be on your own, could be with a partner. It could be as a result of an infection in that region. And those things are all treated slightly differently, yes.
Is there not a concern, and you mentioned that the emphasis has been a lot on women and women's bodies, is there not an element that could bring about a certain amount of shame in having a healthy sex life, but then having this notion that you have to then get cleaned?
So I think we can definitely find threads like that in our history because different people approach things in different ways. We can also find threads that understand that this is a ritual of transition, that honours a woman's body cycles as well as men's bodily cycles. And men do use the mikveh, although at different times. And I think it's a sense of how do we understand that this is a ritual that has honoured bodies but has also been used against bodies. We want to be honest about that, and we want to be honest about the fact that this is an opportunity to embrace it. So I think for a lot of people, there's a sense of, yes, this is about women's bodies, but for some women, it's an incredibly empowering opportunity where we have actually psychoanalysts use this quite a lot with couples therapies, where a couple might come and their sex life has died and they want to reignite a bit of passion. They say, okay, have a bit of time apart, and then you come back together and that might help. And that's essentially what part of the mikveh ritual is doing. And since the time of the Mishnah, which is nearly 2,000 years ago, the rabbis have acknowledged that this is essentially a marital aid for many people.
Right. bringing my own personal history into this for a moment, I had a Jewish wedding some years ago, and I remember the rabbi talking to my now ex-wife about mikveh and niddah, and I'm not going to lie to you, and this was sort of in a more orthodox strand, but I'm not going to lie to you. It felt uncomfortable to me because it felt like the focus was on her and was on her sort of perceived purity / impurity, niddah being linked to her cycle and the point at which she needed to cleanse. And she didn't do this. Is it fair to say, just to almost repeat the question I've already asked, but with that personal experience, that if we're not careful, it can create that sense of I'm going to use the word dirtiness?
Absolutely, and I think one of the big pieces of work that I've been doing over the last decade and that the Wellspring Project is really passionate about is to try and help us understand, if we look at the Hebrew, if we look at the texts, that this isn't about dirt. The Torah doesn't understand these words that we've translated as pure and impure to be about dirt. They are about specific emissions. They don't include, for example, what you do in the toilet, which we would consider to be dirty, right? It's a different way of thinking about things. The English has misled us, but also people have misused the language, and it is taught in that way at times, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm a progressive rabbi, obviously, but there are Orthodox and progressive rabbis collaborating to really help us understand that this isn't about pure and impure, dirty and clean. This is about moments of transition, and lots of us have experienced the power of that as a ritual. So if you've shared a story, may I share my mikveh story a little bit? So I started going to the mikveh when I discovered I had polycystic ovaries as a way of marking that sense of fear and stress, and that was tied up with my menstrual cycle. And then when we got married, we had a 6-year journey of infertility and treatment. At times we were told we wouldn't be treated. At times we thought we might have to adopt, and which would have been wonderful too. But I had this space every month to tie in with what my body was doing and to honour it and feel the feelings I needed to feel, not just to pretend that everything's okay and get on with it all being okay. The mikveh could hold my tears. The mikveh could let me be vulnerable and let me be just me before my creator. There was no food involved, no family. It's not a big community celebration. It's really just about you and that space. So for me, that personal journey was really powerful. But as a rabbi, I've had the privilege of being able to take people to the mikveh for special birthdays or for gender transitioning or for ending chemotherapy, to write special ceremonies for conversion, not just the regular stuff that's there, and really give people a chance to have a spiritual space that's just about them.
It's fascinating. I have to be honest. I'm going to broaden this out momentarily, and as I do so, I will broach what I think I've stated before on air about certain concerns I have around my own faith. So just to broaden it out, when you look at these kind of rituals, and you look at, for example, the laws of kashrut, the laws of keeping kosher, so that certain animals are, for want of a better word, clean and not clean, do you not think that there is a risk? Devil's advocate here. Do you not think there is a risk that these kind of rituals induce anxiety / neurosis rather than create peace of mind?
So as a progressive rabbi, I would say that if something is creating neurosis in you, then this isn't probably the right ritual for you. And let's work to find what is. I think underlying a lot of these rituals are incredibly deep values and principles that help find meaning in life and find wonder in the world, but they're not necessarily taught in a way that help us do that. And that is, a failing on the part of the community where it happened. And it's up to us to make sure that we're teaching it right and that people are understanding that they can find their rituals that work for them. I think one of the powers of something like the Wellspring Project and mikveh is that we're looking at what's going on in the world right now. Where are people? And the reality is people are really struggling. We need rituals that help us mark what's going on in our lives, which frankly has been quite tough this year. So we really want to give people an opportunity to talk about and honour these shifts in their lives. And hand washing has become quite the thing this year. So giving people a chance to ritualize hand washing, which is a Jewish ritual anyway, but uses water to kind of elevate and honor what's going on in our life. So I think you're right. Of course, these things can lead to neuroses, and it's really about each person going on their own journey with someone who can help guide them, which we're also hoping to have at the mikveh, is really well-trained guides who can create the ritual you need to have, and to make it be what you need it to be in your life.
Here's the thing, because there is the sort of tabloid version of this, which is people get naked. There are some
not usually together.
Okay, but there are some very well-founded safeguarding concerns, some well-founded societal, cultural concerns. What do you do to reassure anyone who is thinking about going on this journey? And how do you prevent people getting involved whose motives perhaps are not entirely pure?
So, as a project, we are very aware of safeguarding and of ensuring that this is an absolutely safe space. All the usual ways that people do DBS checks and all those sorts of things. It's going to be a space where people have absolute control over who does and doesn't accompany them. They can choose the gender of their accompany person. They don't have to come into the mikveh with them. They can if they want them to, so it's their choice. But it's a person who will help them craft the ritual as they need it to be. And I think we are very aware of the need to mitigate any problems that could arise, and keeping that at the forefront is how do we protect people and making sure that we're doing that right, absolutely. And being honest about the fact that there have been problems in the past, and we're going to keep that at the forefront.
You've done well, because it's a ritual which I think and we spoke about this earlier in the week, which I think I do have some concerns about, but actually the way you describe it as a spiritual, and I'm going to use the word almost sensual experience, I think one can begin to understand how it can form part of a faith journey. And I know that at your project you're keen to look at the value of rituals in our well-being.
We are, and we're having an evening to do that on the 18th of January. We've got an amazing array of speakers, including Anita Demont, who founded the sort of mother of all these mikvahot in Boston in America. She's the author of a book called The Red Tent, which many of you may have read. And she is going to be speaking along with Johnny Benjamin, who's a mental health campaigner.
The great Johnny Benjamin.
Rabbi Miriam Burgess. Johnny's brilliant, one of my congregants. And we're looking forward to having a really open, honest conversation about ritual and about mental health and about how we can use ritual to support ourselves through times like this. If anyone wants to book, you can go to wellspringprojectuk.org and it's all there. We're also looking for trustees, so people can sign up to be trustees. And we really just want to open up the conversation to supporting one another at this really hard time.
Is this evening, and the guest list is very strong, I have to say, is this available to all faiths?
It is, absolutely. And the project will be available to all faiths. So the idea is that our mikveh, which is at the moment a dream that we're hoping to build, it's going to sit at the heart of a wellbeing centre. So there's going to be therapy rooms and treatment rooms and spaces that professionals can hire to offer their services. And then they may want to use the mikveh at the end of a series of therapy to celebrate the close of that therapy and to honour what journey this person's been on. It's all about wellbeing, and mikveh will look different for each person. So we want to empower everyone to have the mikveh experience that they want to have. There are such a diverse array of reasons people use it today, and we really just want to walk people's journeys with them. And I would love to take you someday, Nick, please.
Does that involve me taking my clothes off?
Not in front of me, please.
Okay, because frankly, the thought of me taking my clothes off is way too much for any of my listeners to deal with at approaching 9:30.
I think we would also say, if people really have a problem with getting naked and they want to go in some kind of covering, that's their choice. It's absolutely fine. For me, the idea of being really naked and in the water, all the water touching me, is really important. But this is about creating the experience that each person needs.
It's almost back to the womb, isn't it? And that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. Debbie, you've done brilliantly. It's been really interesting to hear your approach. Wellspringprojectuk.org. Have I got that right?
You have. Thank you so much for having us, Nick.
Lovely to chat to you. Monday evening, Monday week, so Monday the 18th of January, wellspringproject.uk.org if you want to get involved. I'd be very interested to go and watch what they have to say, just because I'm interested. As I think you noticed, I have certain concerns, but I'm not sure if it would be my thing. But I really do enjoy allowing people the chance to explain why it's important for them and giving them the space to do so. And Debbie Young-Summers there, who's from Boreham Wood, very much local to us, talking about mikveh and the importance it has for her. Her synagogue, I believe, I think it's Hendon, I think is where she now works out of. But as you heard, a progressive rabbi with a progressive take.